Yes.
Deal?
Doing.
Welcome to the Acquia podcast, Drupal technology, community, and business.
Welcome to the Acquia podcast, Drupal technology, community, and business.
There's a module for that?
Of course there is.
This is the Acquia podcast. They talk about Drupal and stuff.
What is Drupal?
Oh, jeez. Drupal is three things to me. It's a content management system, so you can use it to build any kind of website or web-related thingy you can think of. It's also a content framework, so it's something that you can use to extend in any way that you can imagine. So if you decide you don't really want users on your site, you want everyone to authenticate by, their eye scan or something like that, Drupal's got hooks. You can go in there and you can extend it to make it do what you want. And then the third thing it is it's this amazing community. It's an international community of thousands of people who, are funny and passionate and just giving, and they love what they do, and it's just really exciting to work with them every day and see the cool things that they innovate and come up with.
So, roll it back to 2005. What's your first Drupal memory?
Okay, so my first Drupal memory was I went into the IRC channel in Pound Drupal, and I introduced myself to everyone, and I said, "Hi everybody, my name is Angie, and I'm a new student, and I'm so excited to be here, and I can't wait to work with all of you." And then one of the people in the IRC channel said, "Shut up! This is a development channel!" And I was like, "Ah!" And so I kind of hid under a blanket for a few hours. That was my first Drupal memory. Luckily, it went up from there. But,
Okay. I happen to know that you drew a comic strip about that.
I did, yes.
That's still online, right?
Yeah.
I'll link to that in the podcast notes.
Yeah. The good news is that experience actually taught me a lot about the culture of open source and being respectful of people's boundaries, and it also taught me that we need to treat newbies better. And so I spent a lot of time, sort of since then, trying to change the culture of the Drupal community to be a bit more, accepting of people when they make little social foibles like that. So,
So what did you work on in that summer of code?
so I wrote the quiz module. It was a project that was decided on by Robert Douglas, who was my summer of code mentor, and he used to work at Acquia, and I think he's at Commerce Guys now. And so the idea was a framework for educators or anyone who needed this kind of stuff, game companies, whatever, to be able to write questions that tied into larger quizzes, and you could do things like randomize the questions and answers and things like that. So I was just barely selected for Summer of Code that year. There was actually 2 students on the project, and they decided last minute to put 2 of them on there, and that's the only reason I'm in Drupal today. So thank you, Robert Douglas. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll buy him a beer just for that
Awesome.
next time I see him.
Awesome.
What version of Drupal was that?
That was, it was 4.6, and when 4.7 was being actively developed, and so my Summer Code project was actually against 4.7. So I was chasing head as it was moving around, and so literally every day I wouldn't know if my module would work or not because they might have changed something upstream that broke everything. So that was a very exciting time.
Sure, and that's actually the space you live in now.
Correct.
Day to day.
Now I break other people's modules.
So can you compare Drupal now to back then?
Well, it was a lot smaller for one thing. I remember I actually read the entire handbook in one sitting because it was 50 or 75 pages back then, and nowadays it's 13 gazillion pages. I don't even know how big it is. There weren't any books about Drupal back then, so that's a huge improvement from before. There was very few Drupal companies. I remember there was Civic Space, and there was Bright, and there were a couple of other ones, and that were kind of the shepherds, but a lot of us were freelancers or just kind of hobbyists back then. And I think there's been a pretty big shift in the Drupal community where a lot of people actually have Drupal as their day job now. And there's a lot of big companies doing a lot of big, crazy things with Drupal. I think our community is a lot more diverse now than it was back then. I remember there only being a couple of women, for example. I don't remember us ever talking about accessibility or some of these other things, or usability. There was a couple of people who kind of were passionate about that, but it wasn't like a thing. And I think Drupal's really grown up a lot in the past 7 years or 8 years, however long it's been. to the point where we embrace a much wider swath of contributors than we used to. We have a much better onboarding process for people getting started. So it's still a big learning curve, or sometimes I call it a learning cliff, but, but there's a lot more tools available to help people through that. But one thing that hasn't changed at all, at least from what I've observed, is the spirit of the community. Like, I go to a DrupalCon with 3,000 or 4,000 people now. It's the same as the first DrupalCon I attended that was just like 70 people there. Just people are fun. They really enjoy talking about what gets them fired up and passionate about Drupal, and they're very welcoming to newcomers. So that's one thing that hasn't changed. I'm really happy about that.
One of the changes that I really love from that period, comparing that period to now, is that I had the feeling in those days that you pretty much had to be a hardcore coder to have anything to say or to be useful to anyone in the community. And now we have marketers, lawyers, designers, usability people. Every profession that touches the web is now involved in Drupal as well, and bringing something to it. Whether that's enabling us to work in business contexts, whether that's enabling us to make simpler, more usable applications. I love that diversity of contribution as well that you touched on.
Yep, yeah, for sure. It's it's an amazing community, and we still have some barriers to break down. And like, we're really good at giving coders like a nice on-ramp of places to go and things to do. We have to work on that a little bit with our more non-technical community members, but definitely the spirit of the community is very opening and engaging. We definitely want to work with all those people. It's just a question of, Drupal is a project that was grown up by developers for developers, and so it's been a bit of a transition trying to broaden that scope a bit, but I totally agree. It's been great to see project managers and, expert designers and, people like that coming into the community and really improving the project.
What's the best Drupal module you ever used?
The best module I ever used is probably the upgrade status module. This module is awesome. You basically install it on your Drupal 6 site or Drupal 7 site or whatever, and it goes through and it tells you what the modules are that are compatible with the next version of Drupal, so you can time when you should do your upgrades. And when you do your upgrades, it actually has a nice little step-through thing that says, first, you should back up your files, then you should do this, then you should do this, and actually steps you through the entire process, which really makes really kind of difficult core, upgrades a lot more easy and less, manageable and stuff like that. So that would be one of my favorite modules of all time.
Great choice. Thank you so much for your time, Angie.
No problem.
It's great to talk with you.
Great to talk to you, too.
Drupal, 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 Drupal.
There's a module for that?
Of course there is.
Like, this is one. That's smaller on the front, bigger on the top.
Oh, okay.
You want to put that on the podcast.